What is up, kinfolk? So, yesterday, you guys may have seen the debate between Destiny and Angryman. I'm kind of going to skip a little forward to the part that I was more interested in. I kind of watched it, and most of the takes they have, I, for the most part, agree with Angryman on to in certain areas. I agree with Destiny on. But as y'all know, I'm not going to make this go on any longer than it already is. So, without further ado, let's get into it.
Online, so you hear about like all the whores and sluts and blah blah blah. When I talk to traditional women or conservative women, their complaints are always like, I have no fucking idea where you can ever find a good conservative man. They don't exist. It's a bunch of schizoid young men that sit in their basements, play computer games all day, and fantasize about like having a harem of 50 women they fuck, like the guys on Fresh and Fit tell them to do, right? Like I don't feel like places in the manosphere are producing these factories of like good, positive, solid young men that are like good conservative men, because their engagement with religion is really bad. Look at fucking, I don't want to go down that whole Andrew Tate road if you don't want to, but like Andrew Tate coming out as Islamic after fucking running a casino and a cam business is like the two biggest, most haram things you can do in Islam, right? Or like a lot of these guys saying we need to embrace more like Christian values while telling you to have one-ended open relationships where you're fucking younger and younger women every year. I don't think that these are the centers of society that are going to be creating the like the traditional conservative man of tomorrow. It's just
I would disagree. Okay, I'm not disagreeing with Destiny's point in the sense of there aren't those men out there. I just don't think they're as popular. A lot of men who tend to be a little bit more on the political side of the spectrum that I've noticed tend to have that type of a mindset. The ones who are a little bit more on, more on the political side, I hear a lot of that, like men saying we need to rise up, take care of our families, we need to be more family oriented. I would consider myself traditional in the term that I was not one to party, one to go out and club. I tried clubbing one time and I absolutely hated it. But I think the issue with that is when it comes to traditional women, the way that we're going to find a lot of our men is going to be more than likely in either a church environment or like a group environment. College is another one. But, the amount of men who are dropping out and not going to college is also rising. So that's another place that you can't really necessarily rely on to find a more traditional man. I would say like more conservative people typically tend to be a little bit more traditionalist, which brings into like I said religion, which I guess to his point is like, they're not really religious. So if you are trying to find a more traditional person, more than likely they're going to be conservative, more than likely they're going to be religious. So you would end up dating somebody who has that type of mindset. If you're trying to find somebody who is traditional and you're having the mindset of having multiple women and, like you said, haram and all this stuff, like I don't see that happening for you. I think you're going to get the same exact thing that you complain about all the time on the internet. You're going to get the gold diggers. You're going to get those type of women because that's what you're attracting.
It's like the new marketing ploy that's being sold. And then all these guys that are falling into this shit, I call it OnlyFans for men, because it's just like it's rotting and destroying their minds, thinking them or leading them into thinking they're going to be something that they're never going to be. And it's not preparing them for the future in a way that I think a conservative person would be.
Well, I can't really speak for the whole space, but I do know that the vast majority of the guys that watch my show on a regular basis are those traditional type guys. Now, granted, a lot of them are already married. A lot of them are already in relationships. But what they find is here's the issue that they find. Let me break it down for you. What's happening is when they go out into the world and attempt to live a traditional life, they're constantly being told, these guys are constantly, meeting barriers, trying to live a traditional life. Now, when they go out here, I don't know where
I would say that's right. I mean, being a conservative in today's market is countercultural. Being traditional is countercultural. Transparency, I'm no longer a virgin, but I've been a virgin up until the age of 26. I am currently 29. And when I would tell people that I was one, I would get hit with, well, what's wrong with you as a woman? Some people might think I was lying. Because at the time, I did value virginity, and I still do. Looking back on what I did, I don't think it was a great idea, especially because I put a lot of, for lack of a better term, I gave someone a permanent part of me, and he was a temporary person. I'm no longer with him. I don't even communicate with him anymore. So when it comes to traditional people, conservative people, we definitely do get hit with some type of a backlash, or having a stance and taking a stand on what we will and will not tolerate, whether it be in our relationships, whether it be in our belief system. So yeah, I 100% agree. It's not just for men, it's for women, because I've been on the receiving end of that. It is tough. And I will say, on the men's side of it, you're going to be looked at as a square. You're going to be looked at as something's wrong with you, because it's like, yo, how are you? There was a dude who was 30. I saw this story when I was younger. This guy is 30, African American man, and he's a virgin. And, you know, he's not ugly at all. Dude was very attractive. But his mindset is, I'm saving myself till I'm with the woman that I marry. And what made it worse is he's in Las Vegas. So you already know a whole bunch of people are like, you know, this dude is probably, you know, he swam in the ocean a little bit. But no, he's like, no, I seriously don't want that for myself. And I want to spend this precious time with my wife and give this precious part of me to my wife. Being a conservative, being traditional, you're going to be looked at as weird. You're going to be looked at as a square. Some of it is because I feel like a lot of people are duped into thinking that this is just the way that things are. Some women believe, like, yeah, having a high body count is just what people do. But then when you come across someone who doesn't, it's like, well, what's wrong with you? Why don't you have a high body count? Or similarly, if you have a guy who's just like, yeah, I'm not for just sleeping with random women and I want something genuine, most of the dudes would be like, yo, dude, like, what's wrong with you? Or some type of square? Are you gay? And that's, I mean, I've heard that from black folks. Like, you know, like, that's not how you roll. Like, what's wrong with you? What's up with you? Which is unfortunate. I think it speaks to our culture. You're going to be an outcast, and you have to also recognize, because you're an outcast in your counterculture and there's not as many of us left, it's going to be even harder to find somebody who has the same exact views as you do. And even just those small views, and then we can go on to a whole thing about religion and other stuff too. So it's going to be really hard on either side.
Conservative, traditional women that you're talking about I don't know where they congregate, but these are the complaints that guys give to me, that they have so much difficulty finding these type of women, especially in black culture. In black culture, we have an issue where there's this culture of promiscuity. There's this culture of, the slut walk and all of those different type of things, where every single woman they encounter is part of the sexual revolution. So they're going to be, a little more free sexually. And that's a nice way of putting it. So when these guys are out here actually looking for marriageable women, they're coming up short. They can't find any, because part of the new age way of thinking is that women should be able to do the things that men have traditionally done. And the sad part is, whenever you hear that, it's always women taking the most negative things of men and then touting that as empowerment. This is what the guys are encountering on a regular basis, where the women, they want to do the same things. They want to have the same equality as men, which is fine, but they don't want the same accountability, the same responsibility. It doesn't make any sense.
I mean,
I'm contemplating, because maybe, and sometimes I look at stuff from an economics lens. I don't hear, because I grew up in a middle class neighborhood, I've never heard black folks in my area. Now, I've seen it a lot on social media, and I think that's also the thing too. Things that aren't necessarily common, you think are common, but if you look in the average day-to-day, normal people don't think like that. So I have heard women out here saying, yeah, like, I should be able to sleep with whoever I want to and be able to do all this and be like dogless just like men. Now, in their actions, because I've met some women, in their actions, they may feel that way, but they won't come out and blatantly say it. When it comes to where you would find a traditional woman, I'll be honest, from my stance, I was at the golf course or I was at home or I was studying. We're not out there like that. And I think that that's the issue with a lot of men, and they don't a man who finds a wife finds a good thing. That's a Bible verse. You have to look. And unfortunately, some of the places that men are looking are not going to be places where we frequent. Like I said, I was at the golf course. The only African American men that I ran into were either younger than me or they were older than me. And I like hanging out with the old heads because, they dope. They take my money. I take their money. We talk smack. They dope. They fantastic with their little cigars, having their beers, whatever. Like, it's a fun time. It's a fun time. But most traditional women, I would say, we're going to be at church. We're not going to be in the clubs. We're going to be at home playing video games, just chilling. Like, we're not out there like that. And I think to a certain extent, that's our fault as well. I'm not putting that on the men. Like, you guys aren't looking hard enough. I know growing up for myself that my dad always told me, it's like, you should not be trying to advertise. That's not your job as a woman. Your job as a woman is a man's supposed to chase after you. He's supposed to come after you. So you don't want to be the aggressor. You don't want to be out here just putting all your information out there so that someone will come to you. With social media, that is how it is with dating apps. You could basically go through someone's profile, do your own resume, and see if someone is a right fit for you. But even that, I don't think a lot of traditional women are on dating apps. And if they are, they're probably going to be on Christian Mingle, eHarmony. They're not going to be on the standard Tinder. I had a friend who's a Christian. She did dating stuff. And I mean, she had some obscure dating sites. And one of the things that she told me, she's like, I don't like to do the mainstream ones because from a Christian's perspective, she's like, they may be cute, but I know when it comes to a relationship, they can't be a great leader to me. And if I want to marry and have a leader and a man in my life who will be the head of our household, I don't feel like I will find them on these dating sites. So instead, I go for a little bit more obscure because they're not as mainstream. They're not as saturated. And I can find a little bit more people who are trying to be genuine as opposed to just having a one-night stand. So part of it is on us. I will say as women, we need to be a little bit more, I don't want to say aggressive, but intentional and actually put ourselves out there. As traditional women, we've been told to basically hide ourselves, and this is a game of hide and seek. And the man who is the best at finding will be the one who gets us. But now we're looking at our ages and we're getting older and older and older. We're all equally to blame in this one.
Willing to be in the right. Have you heard of this? I know you've heard the saying. Have you heard of the saying, dress for the job that you want?
Yeah.
Yeah. The idea is you should carry yourself through life like you're where you want to be, because that's how you're going to find that place, essentially, right? I'll hear people say this, I don't know where to find conservative women. And then you ask them, well, where are you looking? And they're like, well, I've tried Tinder. I've gone on Bumble.
Worst places to look.
Gone on Hinge, and it's okay, do you go to a church? Do you have a community of conservative friends? Have you been involved in any political or community organizing? Because especially in the Black community, right, women are the backbones of all of these things. And if you're looking for conservative people and you're in those areas, you'll find them there. But I feel like people aren't setting themselves up in a conservative lifestyle. If you tell me you're looking for a conservative woman and you're not part of your local church, Jesus, that's the number one place to start, right? Because these are off of churches are where all of your community building activities are going to stem from. Every church has a bulletin board where people are doing things. A lot of churches are involved in community outreach. You can volunteer. You meet a ton of people this way. But people aren't willing to go out and look for it. Yeah, but I feel like in terms of that type of advice, I never hear red pillars talking about that. It's always the sexual marketplace and high value men are these things you have to do to exploit the dynamics of the evolutionary psychology of women so that you can fuck as many women as possible. And that's why you're going to be 1%. And that's the message I hear over and over and over and over and over again, rather than look up your local archdiocese, start going to your church every Sunday. And when church ends, everybody's chatting with each other because that's what they do. Sometimes the priest or whatever will come out and talk to people, and you just like talk to people and you meet friends that way. Like that's how you organically grow out a group of friends. But I don't hear that advice ever in the manosphere. I never hear that.
I hate the reason why you never hear that in the manosphere is because the biggest hoes usually go to church. They're usually the most promiscuous. They're usually the most trifling. Like, guys wish it was that easy. They could just go to church and find a good, wholesome girl at church. They can't. That's usually where the worst ones are at.
On average, do you think the women in...
Oh, God. All right. So, he's not wrong. But he's not right. When it comes to church culture, especially black church culture, you feel the need to prove yourself and to have a testimony, so you go out and you just act buck wild crazy. The only issue with that is some people make it back and some people don't. So to his point, yes, I do know a lot of promiscuous women who've gone to church just from me growing up. Here's where he's wrong, though, which I think is another thing that when it comes to the red pill community, like I said, a lot of men say that they want a high value woman, but when you come to like a real Christian woman who isn't going to put up with your crap, who is going to call you out on your stuff, tell you that, hey, what you're doing is wrong, who's going to tell you, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that. I think there are only so many men who are going to be willing to put up with that. I've heard this. Orthodox Jews, in their dating and relationships, the men are not allowed to touch the women. They're not allowed to be in a place with a woman by themselves if they are courting her with the intention of marriage. They always have a chaperone. There's always somebody around. They're not allowed to kiss. They're not allowed to touch each other at all. No holding hands, no nothing. As a way of keeping temptation at bay, because I mean, you know how many babies have just been popped out purely because temptation just took control? We are human. When the chemicals are hitting just the right way and the mood is right, things can happen. So in Jewish tradition, Orthodox Jewish, they say don't touch each other at all. And to keep anything from popping off, y'all will never be in a room by y'allself ever. How many men, unless you were raised in that culture, are willing to put up with that type of a thing? I will say most Western men will not do that. There are some dudes who, even when a woman says that she doesn't want to have sex until marriage, they can't handle that. Some women will concede on certain things like kissing, hugging, holding hands. Some women aren't even willing to do that. Some people would say, hey, no kissing. Maybe we could hold hands, chaperoning, that kind of thing. Those are some of the things I heard growing up. So in those regards, I don't know a lot of Western men, once again, unless they grew up in that culture, who will be willing to do that. I don't hear a lot of that in the red pill community. I think a lot of it is like, hey, you want to basically build yourself up to the point of where you would have women throwing themselves at you. But that brings back the whole entire problem of you're creating a lifestyle and you're chasing a lifestyle so women will throw themselves at you, but in the end, you know that's not satisfying you because you can't find a woman who's willing to stick by you. That's not how I've heard it been preached. But to his point, he's not wrong. I kind of cut it off, but I think Destiny's next point will probably be, do you think you'll be better off finding somebody in the church who's going to be more traditional than you will outside of the church? I think you have better odds, depending also on what church you go to too, because if you go to a church where they're not about nothing, then of course you're going to find some people who aren't about nothing. You go to a traditional church, I know some churches where they are completely biblical to the point where women have to cover their hair. Are you willing to go to a church like that and be subject to the rules and codes of how they do their doctrine? Now, if you're just trying to go, like I said, the basic ones where everybody, like, they're not about nothing, it's just a feel-good type of vibe, just to know that, hey, I went to church and I did my due diligence for the week, and you're not about nothing, then yeah, you're going to come out of that with a woman, potentially, who isn't about anything either. But if you go to, like, a place where they're very serious about their customs, very serious about how they conduct themselves, that they're not about the foolishness. Either you're going to sink or you're going to swim. It is what it is.
church are going to be more promiscuous, or like women that are like at a bar or a club?
Bro, they do the same thing.
So every woman
twerking,
everywhere, there are no more conservative women.
They're twerking. They're twerking in church. When you look at the black community, the vast majority of the men don't even go to church anymore. They've checked out, and the reason why they checked out is because of the ridiculousness that's going on in the church. You got the Baptist preacher.
The chat is like, twerking in church, really? Like recently, a pastor who's talking about having a dispensary for the church. I've seen in a white church, because we're talking about black church now, but I've seen in a white church a thing on TikTok. Once again, social media. Everything's going to be like put up like, oh my gosh, like, is this how they act in church? It was just one church and they were just tripping. They had, like, for Christmas, the equivalent of strippers. Like doing a dance to Unholy. I don't know, but there was just a whole bunch of dudes in like Santa pants and shirtless, like doing crazy stuff like this. And I'm like, we're going to hell. Oh, so yeah, there's plenty of foolishness everywhere. But once again, where are you looking? Are you looking at a church where people aren't serious, or are you looking at a church where people are serious and they take their faith seriously? You're going to find different types of people in these places. It's just, are you, and once again, it's going to require you to be uncomfortable, because if you're just out here doing your thing, like I said, you come from outside of that culture, outside of the customs of a church that's being serious, and now you're jumping into this for the purpose of finding a wife. They're going to be like, okay, sir, we don't wear jeans. Or for the women, we don't wear jeans. You want to find a traditional man? We don't wear jeans at this church. Yeah, we wear skirts. No, not that short. Yeah, longer. And make sure you have pantyhose underneath. And make sure that you're wearing your stockings. See, like, some women can't handle that. But then, likewise, young man, we don't sag here. We don't. Hey, someone get him a belt. You don't got a belt? Okay. Well, brother so and so, he's gonna take you into the clothes closet. We gonna find you some nice pants, but we don't do that here, sir. No hats on in the service. Some dudes ain't willing to do that. Like, straight up, is what it is. Is what it is.
You're actually having sex with women in the congregation. You've got women actually twerking in church. You've got the single mothers sitting on the front pew of the church. Like, the church, especially in the black community, I can't speak for the white community, but in the black community, the church is lost, bro. It's done.
Where are all of these single moms coming from?
Some of them are in church. Ain't gonna hold you. But in some of their defenses, it's, I've turned a new leaf. But they're also in the church.
Where are they coming from?
Yeah.
Well,
if the church is fucked because it's all like single moms and people, like, it seems like it takes two to tango, right? Like, it can't just be all on black women.
Well,
right?
Actually, no, it does. Actually, no, it doesn't take two to tango. And the reason why is because what's going on in the black community is you have a large group of women that are actually having sex with multiple men, having children with multiple men. You actually have twice as many women in the black community have children as the men. Twice as many.
Yeah, but why is that? There are some cities where there's like 3 black women for every 1 man that's not in jail, right? Like, I mean, like, depending on the city that you live in, the availability for some of these black women to even find a guy, the competition is fierce.
There's a number of factors. The competition is very fierce, and there's a number of reasons for that. Number one, we have a small percentage of the population. Black women, last time I checked, outnumbered the men by about 3 or 4 million, something crazy like that. Part of the reason is because of Planned Parenthood. In our community, they actually go to Planned Parenthood to the tune of 367,000 per year. That's 1,000 every day. So that already right there, you have a lower population of just black people in general due to that. In addition to that, there has been an issue with mass incarceration, thanks to good old Joe Biden with the 94 crime bill. So you have a lot of brothers that are locked up. So that diminishes the amount of black men as well. In addition to that, you have the cultural problem of black women not being very easy to get along with and not being easy to cohabitate with. So you have black men who seek relationships outside of the black race, outside of the country, with the passport bros, with SYSBM, all of those different things. So then you end up with an even lower amount. And what happens is you have black women out here that are more prone to deal with what people call the Pookies and the Ray Rays, and they'll go out here and they'll have kids, they'll have children with 1, 2, maybe even 3 different men. And
what black women are we talking about here? Because once again, I'm going to bring it down to economics. I don't see women who are in middle to upper class doing this. They're more masculine in the fact that they'll sleep around for sure. Having multiple children, no, because a lot of them are about that bread, which is why some of them are single and they'll probably be single for the rest of their lives. And just in general, being successful brings a more cantankerous nature that most people aren't willing to put up with. That's why I said in the last video, it's only at the top. But yeah, what black women, because I want to say that how he's describing this, it sounds like low tier women. Where I have seen it very prevalent has been in my jobs when I had worked as a one-on-one aide in a low income community tutoring. That was how the women functioned. That is how the dudes operated, where they were very promiscuous women. They were very promiscuous men who were taking government checks and who had multiple kids. And it's unfortunate. But I don't think that speaks for the majority of African Americans. I think that is something that is put forth. That's a narrative that is constantly pushed because people are going to look at me if they never met an African American or a black person ever in their life. If they only viewed what they see on television, everything like that, they're going to assume very quickly I'm an angry black woman, that I am very rude, very mean to be around, that I eat hot Cheetos and smack my head like this, that I spend a ton of money getting my nails done, that I love having expensive stuff, that I have multiple baby daddies, and that is completely not the case. And I don't know the numbers on this, but I honestly don't think it speaks to the majority of African Americans.
The reason why that is because it's been incentivized by our government, unfortunately. A lot of these women are doing that in order to supplement their lifestyle with welfare, food stamps, child support, all of those different things. There's a bunch of different factors that weigh into that.
Okay, for whatever we want to blame black women for this, black men are just as culpable, right? We can complain about the mass incarceration from the 93 crime bill all we want, but Joe Biden doesn't make somebody sell weed. Joe Biden doesn't make somebody carry an unregistered firearm. Joe Biden doesn't make somebody a gangbanger. Like, these are choices that are still being made, that are being made by black men that fuck over black women in the community. And I think that the cultural problems stem from a lot of the kind of like dysfunction that goes back and forth there. I don't think it's fair to blame black women on everything. Like, we can talk about like food stamps and welfare and all that too, but that exists for black people and white people and every other type of person in the United States. But it seems like the black community has like a special problem with it, right?
Well, hold on. No, when we're talking about that, there are things that are very specific. Okay, one book written by what is her name? Elizabeth Hinton, who I think went to Yale. I think she's a professor in African American studies at either Yale or I think Yale, if I'm not mistaken. She wrote From the War on Poverty to the War on Crime. And she pointed out through her research, right after you get the 65 Voters' Rights Act, you actually have a overhauling of the criminal justice system where they started policing urban areas more heavily. This is right after the Industrial Revolution, where you have black people migrating into the urban centers. You have them policing them more heavily. Okay, you actually have what is the equivalent of today billions of dollars funneled into that criminal program. I forgot the name of it, but the purpose was to create probation officers, all of these different things to create a revolving door in the criminal justice system, which has affected the black community significantly. So yeah, it's wrong for any black man to go out here and commit crimes and do things that he doesn't have any business. But it has been historically proven over and over again that black men have been disproportionately targeted by the criminal justice system, especially with particular crimes. When you have certain narcotics that black men get a harsher sentence for, whereas other groups of men might get a slap on the wrist. Or
All right, fair point. There is some validity to that. Um, the fact that cocaine was a slap on the wrist versus crack, which was not even the purest form of cocaine, and black men went away for a very long time because of selling crack. Because in a lot of ways, too, the government, we could look back at how the government was working very diligently in terms of pumping drugs and everything into low-income neighborhoods, specifically black neighborhoods. I'm not giving a pass to people who've committed crimes, but it's all about survival, and you're going to do crazy things just to survive. Some people get greedy and they start saying, okay, I want to make more money, but I think in a lot of ways, black men did what they had to do to survive, similar with black women at the same exact time. They did what they had to do to survive, and the government did play a huge role in locking people up by crazy enough, putting them in a position to where they could sell all these drugs and then simultaneously benefiting from pumping these drugs in by putting these people in jail. So seeing a lot of black men out of the home left black women very vulnerable, left their kids very vulnerable to succumb to the streets and to have no one to raise them. So I'm not giving a pass. I understand the mindset to need to survive and do what you have to do to survive. But on the same exact vein, like he said, I think there's blame that could be shared. I think because the men weren't home, women had to do what they had to do to survive. And I think that in some ways they've done some good things and in some ways they haven't. So like incentivizing having multiple children to get a check from the government, because the government is now your new husband. Who's going to take care of you? Your husband's no longer here. Either he's in jail or he's passed away, and now it's just you and all of these kids. And back in the day, people were having like 10, 12 kids. It was with the same exact dude. So it's like, man, now he's gone. I have all these kids and I have all these mouths to feed. It's just a bad scenario, bad situation all around. You're in a position and in a place where you're offered very few options. Doesn't mean that you don't have options, but you're offered very few options. So you're going to fall into whatever you fall into. If you're not diligent, and if you're not diligent as a person, and if you don't have people who around you who are diligent and telling you that you don't have to do what you're doing. I can't blame this on black women, but I don't even know. I feel like there's no one to really blame, really. I mean, it's just a crappy situation.
Or even worse, when it comes to unaliving somebody, more often than not, when a white guy goes to jail for unaliving somebody, they end up getting a manslaughter charge as opposed to second degree or whatever degree or whatever. Now, I'm not trying to play the victim Olympics. I'm just stating the facts. Like, any of this can be looked up. The research is out there. Yeah, so it's not not just that black men are just like, oh, we're going to go to prison or whatever. Like, right around the time that they overhauled the welfare program in 96, not 96, in 65 and 66, you see a rise in single parent households. You had a number of things that occurred that affect that. You had the emergence of the prison industrial complex. You're just coming out of the Vietnam War, which a lot of black men lost their lives to that. And now you have this welfare program where if you have a man in the house, one of the stipulations is you don't qualify for those particular things, which is unfortunate because during that time you had a really serious problem with poverty. So there's a number of factors that play into all of that.
So to preface this, I just will comment as a small jab. I think it's funny that you're citing a woman who is a historian who went to Yale. So historians are important, right?
That is funny. That's hilarious.
Yeah, sure. That book, America on Fire, I think, or the Poverty One or whatever, right? But regardless of that, Everything you said might be true, but none of that is black women's fault. I just don't think it's fair to blame black women. Like, you can't blame black women for.
I think it's government institution, but I think it's the fault of the culture and the fault of the people in alive at the time for, you know, taking advantage. I don't want to say taking advantage because some of it was needed. I don't think that these things were bad at the time. I think that people have now taken advantage of it. Like, I'm not completely against like child support. I think the biggest way of as a woman to end up in poverty is to have your husband die and to be left with kids, or have him leave and you have kids. So what are you going to do? Especially if you have a lifestyle, if he was the only one working, or even if you guys were both working, that's a form of income that no longer is coming in, and you still have these children you have to take care of. So I'm not opposed to the child support system as how it was intended. However, I will say I'm extremely against the way that women have used it as a paycheck for themselves, to take themselves out, to do all this stuff for themselves, and not using that money for its intended purpose, which is the child. But like a lot of things, you give somebody an inch and they learn the system, they'll take a mile if you're giving it. So I don't think this falls on the fault of, once again, black men. I don't think it falls on the fault of black, especially because, once again, a lot of this was survival based. Now it's not about survival. Now it's about the Benjamins. In some ways it's still survival based because some people really do need that to take care of their kids. And for the women and even the men who use child support for the intended purpose, I say that kudos to you guys. But there are some, and I don't even know, I wish there was a way that you could track the numbers on this, but I don't even think anybody would genuinely be honest if you had a questionnaire and figuring out how much money do you use for your child support on the actual child versus how much you use on yourself. I don't think a lot of women or men, if they are taking child support, would be honest in that regard. That would be an interesting thing to see.
For men being incarcerated. The police are policing these areas. Black men are the ones that are engaging in the crime. The black women aren't. And I guess it just feels a little shitty to blame black women when at the end of the day, they're the ones that get saddled with all of the community responsibility. They've got to be the backbone of like all these families, of all these churches, of all these things that are like the only way these communities function are on the backs of these like single black women moms. And then say, well, hold on, let me finish. And then for black men to turn around and say, well, we got policed really heavily, and so we got caught selling drugs, and that's why you guys are all single moms, and that's why your lives are fucked up. But it's black women's fault for everything that happens in the black community. Okay. I think there's a lot of fault that could be evenly doled out to both sides of what I say. I wouldn't blame black women for it.
Here's the thing with this, all right? There is so much nuance in all of that. Mm-hmm. One, you have a lot of guys that were caught selling drugs that weren't selling drugs.
I don't think there were that many. To actually bring that up, there's definitely been men who should sue the government and everybody was involved, who have been wrongfully accused of a crime they never committed, who had drugs planted on them, and now they're going to jail for an extended period of time. But no, I don't think you can use that as a benchmark to determine that why women are responsible.
Okay, you have a lot of guys that had issues where they got pulled over and, oh, surprise, there's drugs in the car. Where did that come from? Okay, so that's one thing. There's nuance like that. Doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. Fact. All right. Then on top of that, when you're talking about it's not the black women's fault, black women are willing participants in a system that they actually know for a fact is disproportionately prejudiced to their group of men. Okay. They know this. This is not a game. They go to these offices knowing that they can actually take advantage of this system by, oh, I'm in a relationship with a black man who ain't hitting on nothing and don't want to work and blah, 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 all of those different things. So we can't ignore that. We can't ignore that. Now, to sit here and say, oh,
how many women are actually on that life? I think it's similar to the same exact thing of, are there men who had stuff planted on them? Sure, but I think it's a fine minute compared to the overarching men who I don't think should be in jail because they sold weed, but who are in jail because they sold weed based on the 94 crime bill. So how many women are actually out here going in there, and I don't think that women are going in there with the intent of like, this is going to hurt the black man. I think once again, to a certain extent, it comes down to survival, and to a certain extent, it comes down to greed. Because I'm not going to be out here like all women are going in here talking about, oh, like my man is da-da-da-da. I think it's their fault for sleeping with the man and for getting with a man who ain't about nothing. You knew that when you dated him. Similarly, I don't give passes to dudes who are baby daddies and have a really trashy baby mama because you knew who she was. You knew. And you still decided to get with her, and she decided to keep the baby. Now you locked in. I'm sorry, dude. That's on you. That's on you. I'm not gonna be sympathetic to you whatsoever. To a certain extent, it's survival because it's like, look, how am I going to pay for all this stuff for my kid and for their survival? But simultaneously, are there greedy women out there? 100%. I know and have heard of women who literally just pop out babies to get another check and to keep from having to work. Do they exist? Yeah, but I don't think that is a substantial and cover the majority of women who are walking in here trying to get child support payments and checks from the government. I really don't.
It's all black women's fault. I never said it was all black women's fault. But there is a large percentage of black women who have been incentivized to have children out of wedlock. They've been incentivized to utilize a system that they know benefits them. And they do this on a regular basis.
Okay, just as a quick...
Okay, can we... I never finished school. But one of the reasons why I went into STEM, I'm not even gonna lie, is because I knew that the money was good and I knew that they had a diversity problem in Google and all these other companies. So I understand walking into and getting hired by an engineering company, I'm probably the token. But I'm the token getting paid. You can be mad, don't hate the player, hate the game. We can be butthurt about the fact that they are, but at a certain point you gotta be like, well, don't hate. Either you're gonna change the game or you're not gonna participate. Billionaires and millionaires do it all the time. They take advantage of the tax code and they have zero taxes. We get pissed off at them, but it's like, yo, why don't you just learn the same exact information that they did so that you're paying zero taxes, or at least paying a reduced amount than what you would normally pay. But no, we want to complain about, no, they should be giving us their money. And it's like, bro, why don't you just learn the game? Learn the game. Or fight it. Abolish it. Do what you got to do to abolish it and, get rid of it. I don't think that's something that's going to go anywhere because, once again, at the base level, I do think that these systems and programs are important for people. I just think that there are people who now take advantage of the system. But yeah. What? Really? I can't be mad at you. I really can't. But I'm going to stop here because this is going to be a very long video. It's going to be a very long video. Oh, and right when I'm starting to get hot. Okay. So, yeah. That's all, folks. Definitely going to come back to this and finish out because now I'm getting kind of hostile. But anyway, if you made it this far, thank you so much. Go ahead and like the video and subscribe for the next one because I'm gonna just keep going. I'm mad. I'm mad. I didn't think I would be, and for the most part, I agree with men on a lot of stuff. I do. I hear it, but I can't agree. I can't agree with this. I understand the frustration, but I can't agree. Go ahead and subscribe and comment down below what y'all think of this. And let's hop in this pot. Hop in the comment section and let's just go at it. Cause I'm about that. I'm about that life today. As always, kinfolk, I love you and I will see you in the next one. Peace.